What is, or how would you describe a theology of holiness? I think where I would start is just by recognizing that holiness is God, that we are not holy apart from God. The only way it's possible for us to experience, to know, to live into holiness is through experiencing and knowing and living into the God who is holy. Um, and maybe to take that a step further, that we believe that God is love. And so I think it's fair to say that holiness is also the love of God. Holiness is God. Holiness is the love of God expressed in his love to us. It's something that we can't earn, regardless of our efforts, regardless of if we check enough boxes off certain lists. We can't earn holiness through that, but it's something that God offers freely. It's the desire of God's heart is to make his creation holy. And so he breathes his holiness into us and continually pours more and more of his love into us. And we do have a part in that. We have to participate. We have to accept it. We have to embrace it. But he's continually pouring that out for us to accept, for us to step into and participate in, which makes us holy. So important to start is that God is holy and we are not. And we can't make ourselves holy, but it's God's heart and his desire to do that work in us. I also think holiness and associated with this stuff like Christian perfection and entire sanctification, all those phrases and words in the church are something that us as leaders in the church and theology students and undergrad as ministry students, and even if you go further back than that as kids growing up, if we grew up in the Nazarene church especially, then these words are probably familiar to us, and maybe if you were like me, they were words that you kind of acted like you knew what they meant, you acted like you understood them, but really you had no idea. I had no idea. It was just words that I heard a lot, so I felt like I should know them and felt silly acting like or admitting that I didn't. And so for me, a lot of holiness, of my understanding of holiness growing up, was tied closely to that of perfectionism. It was tied closely to being flawless, being without blemish, being mistake-free, all those things. And I've come to realize, especially through this class and through the work of Mildred Bangs Wynkoop, that that's just not true, that holiness is not perfectionism. Holiness is about being filled to our capacity with the love of God. That it's about that love of God invading us and transforming us, transforming our desires and our motivations to look less like our past desires and motivations, to look less like worldly desires and motivations or selfish desires and motivations, and transforming them more and more into the image of God, into the heart of God, into desires and motivations that are filled with and energized by the love of God. And so I think another important piece of that is that when we're filled with the love of God, he continually pours out that more and more and more and fills us to capacity. I might venture to say, hopefully this isn't heresy, but I might venture to say he fills us past capacity, because it seems as if being filled completely with the love of God doesn't allow us to stop there. It doesn't allow us to be content within ourselves, but the love of God is ever expanding and without ceiling and without limit, and it just keeps being poured into us, and so much so that it overflows out of us into concrete action and activities of love in the world around us, and it manifests itself in God's love working through us into others. And so there's the aspect of holiness that deals with who we are and how we love and how we act. But it's not by our own efforts. It's only through the love of God that has filled us, that's transforming us. And maybe that's one of the coolest things for me, is that the love of God truly has no ceiling. And as such, I'm kind of convinced that holiness has no ceiling, that God is continually drawing us closer and closer and closer to him, and filling us more and more and more with his love so we can better reflect him.